For the past 6 months, our interconnected world has been gripped as never before by a medical emergency. The COVID-19 pandemic has infected millions of people worldwide and brought the world economy to its knees. How can innovation help solve the problems? Looking ahead to an uncertain future, how will technology help to shape our new lives at home, at work, and at play as we establish our new normal? How can venture investing help fuel those changes? Those are the questions we'll be asking today here at the OurCrowd Pandemic Innovation Conference. We'll be joined by the world's top medical experts, innovators, investors, and business leaders to discuss the role of technology in addressing the challenges of 2020 and beyond. Stay with us as we negotiate the uncharted waters of planet Corona. Meet potential partners from all over the world and learn about the very latest projects that you can get involved in to help shape our new future. We can't all gather in the same place as usual, but on the event website, you'll find the digital tools you need to get involved, ask questions, join the breakout sessions, and set up private meetings online with other participants around the globe. Welcome to the OurCrowd Pandemic Innovation Conference.
The worst is yes ahead for us. It's very clear that we are getting hit very hard, as was predicted. This is going to get worse before it gets better. It putters along, and you think you're okay. And then it starts to go up a little, and then bingo, it goes up in an exponential way.
Every day when I see the engagement of these vaccine groups, I actually think, wow, we can surprise people on the upside.
You know, the best scientists working hard on this, and I'm hopeful.
I've been saying 18 months, but some of these vaccines are ahead of that schedule.
Researchers here in McGill discovered that the poultry coronavirus is genetically related to the human coronavirus.
Many of the long-term trends that were evident before the crisis are now becoming so vital to all of us.
Crisis came along of the coronavirus. We were all over it, and our community was all over it.
If you can actually get the liquid to where the virus is, even if you got infected, this liquid will actually kill the virus, prevent from the progression of the disease.
And more importantly, we're helping people, stay fit and also stay sane.
TotalCare started as a remote diagnosis tool that gives you clinical-grade data. Now it's being used to treat COVID-19 patients who are in quarantine.
I think the startup community is going to come out stronger because there's no doubt that whether it's this crisis or the next one, technology has a lot of solutions that we're looking for. And I'm very, very hopeful about the long term.
This is the OurCrowd Pandemic Innovation Conference. Welcome to a packed lineup of top experts, innovators, business leaders, and investors from all over the world discussing the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, its implications for the future, and how technology can address the many changes to our lives at home, at work, and at play. And as a bonus, we'll be hosting the world premiere of the new music video from Dave Carroll, When the World Stops Ending. First, with an overview of the effect of the pandemic on global business, here is the founder and CEO of OurCrowd and the face of Israeli venture capital, John Medved.
The last time I spoke to so many people at an OurCrowd event was February 13th in Jerusalem at the OurCrowd Global Investor Summit. It was a very, very different world at that point. We didn't really know what was to come. We had not any idea about really the social distancing that we were all going to experience, the kinds of things that today seem so different. When you look at these scenes of the conference and you realize how close we were, how many hugs we gave. And this happened all 5 days before Israel reported its first case. In fact, we sort of thought that the whole pandemic was something that was happening elsewhere, that we should get involved with, but it wasn't here yet.
We want to send a shout out to all of our friends in China and in Asia
who our thoughts are with you. Chazak ve'ematz, as we say in Hebrew. Be strong and be of courage. We are in this fight together. This virus will be fought by all of the world. This is a global world emergency. So even though we hadn't experienced the pandemic firsthand, we knew there was a global problem. I'm not sure we knew how big of a problem it was, what the wreckage would be in terms of human lives, what the number of cases would be in the world where we're now over 8 million cases and approaching 500,000 deaths. And we wouldn't have even known what would happen here in our country of Israel in terms of the almost 20,000 cases and the 300 or so deaths. But it's interesting when you look at the Israeli experience, we often feel that we're a little ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, that's true in this case. We are now experiencing the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic here in Israel. If you look at where we were just literally a couple of weeks ago, we had it licked. We had it on the run. We were down to 5 cases a day, but not anymore. Yesterday, it was up to 300 cases. And so the second wave has started. We also, back in those days, didn't know what the absolutely horrific impact was going to be on the startup community. That when you look at this data from the Bloomberg Startup Barometer, you'll see that it's down over 40%. Public markets have come back. The startup markets have not come back. But we at OurCrowd moved into high gear. We felt that there was an imperative, a startup imperative, to fight the pandemic and to get our companies moving, to take advantage and to be on the front lines leading in this struggle. And so if you look at what happened since the beginning of March, we have almost 30 companies who've successfully raised new rounds of funding, which is remarkable when you look at the data worldwide that our companies have been able to do that. But more importantly, looking at how many of our companies are playing a major role in either on the medical side, working on vaccines, working on diagnostics, on telemedicine, on analysis via AI, or those who are leading in the new normal, helping us understand and live with these new trends that are emerging as a result of the crisis. So our companies are on this front line, and we here have an imperative today to feature these companies, to understand what they're doing, to hear from them about their innovations, and to get the chance to support them as investors and as active participants in this struggle. We are working on making sure that several of our companies are raising not just good-sized rounds, but big rounds of money. And it's amazing that these are companies that you see here on this slide, like BioCatch, with a $145 million round announced post-pandemic, or companies like TytoCare with $50 million, or Site Diagnostics at a $50 million rate. These are important milestones of companies proving that even in the pandemic, an impact can be made. And finally, there's a question of whether or not this is a great time to be making investments. Because when you look at the trends that are now affecting the world, these are trends that started before. The pace of change has picked up, and now you can see the companies who are taking advantage of these new digital transformative events. Science itself is changing in terms of the collaboration across borders, and the degree to which companies are innovating is absolutely striking. We believe that it's actually a very effective time to invest, because not only are financial crises often good entry points into the market, in this case, the private market, but in addition, it is a social inflection point. These changes in society, whether it's socially distanced work or distance learning or new needs to protect ourselves against cyber hacking, these are the new normal, which absolutely indicate a new opportunity to take advantage of big trends. And finally, we're seeing high signal-to-noise ratio in these successful companies. Today, you'll hear from several companies who are growing in the pandemic, whose revenues are going up, who are acquiring new customers, and who are both doing well and doing good. So with these opening comments, I welcome you to this conference. We look forward to having a great day together.
Back in April, thousands of Israelis and people all over the world celebrated the return to Israel of one particular survivor of COVID-19. Last year, Nusser Yassin, better known as Naz Daily, joined us on stage at the OurCrowd Global Investor Summit. Here's his report on one miraculous survivor.
Hi, I am Eli Beer, but I almost died from COVID-19.
This is a real story. Last month, Eli was in Miami, where he got infected with COVID-19.
My situation is difficult. My breathing is getting worse.
After a long flight, Eli landed home, only to be greeted by hundreds and hundreds of ambulances from the organization that he founded. He was greeted like a hero by health workers, and when he saw his family, he couldn't hold back tears.
This shows that everyone is equal. There is no difference between anyone. I'm a religious Jew. There is no difference between me and a Muslim or a Hindu or Christian. COVID-19 hits everyone, and this shows that we have to unite everyone together in the world to fight diseases, to fight disasters, and be together.
COVID-19 doesn't discriminate. Health workers get it, ambulance drivers get it, and good-hearted people get it. But Eli's recovery is a sign of hope that we can beat this monster together.
And we're delighted to welcome Eli Beer, the president of United Hatzalah, who joins us here in the Pandemic Conference studio to help us understand the impact of this disease on the individual. Eli, it's really good to see you alive and well. It's 2 months since you were discharged from hospital in Miami. What were the effects of COVID-19 on you, both physically and psychologically?
So first of all, I'm glad to be alive in your studio here in OurCrowd. The effects were mostly emotional. You know, the fight for my life was done by the incredible doctors and nurses in Miami. I had to go through physiotherapy to start walking again. People don't realize you lay down 1 month in a coma, you lose all your ability to walk afterwards. You have to learn how to walk, eat, use the bathroom. That was hard. But the emotional reaction was it was a very fast landing. I was unconscious. I was fighting for my life. I had a very small percentage of survival. And then one day I wake up a month later, and I had to fight for understanding where I am, understanding why it happened to me, and go through so many emotional things that went through my head. During that month, I was in another world. I was actually seeing terrible dreams, and it was very hard.
Those were amazing scenes at Ben Gurion Airport in April. Did you realize that your case had touched the hearts of so many people?
Look, I love every single volunteer all around the world of United Hatzalah. These are all volunteers. None get paid. The only way they get paid is what their satisfaction, what they do, their mitzvah, their good deeds. So they know I love them. And when I landed in Israel, I didn't expect it. I don't like the attention, but, you know, 1,000 volunteers were waiting with these ambucycles, with the trucks. I was pinching my tuchus to see if it's not my funeral. I actually thought it was my funeral. I may be looking above and looking down on my funeral. It was so scary because it looked like it was incredible. And at the end of the day, I wish I could have given a hug to everyone, but they had to keep a distance.
Let's go back to that evening in March in Miami when you first fell ill. What were the symptoms that made you realize that that tickle in your throat was more than just the flu?
So the fever was the first symptoms I had. I was there for reasons of the organizations. I had events there. I had different speaking engagements. All of a sudden, I had fever, and I said, well, that's weird. And then I had a little tickle on my throat. I said, okay. I right away checked out of the hotel I was, and I moved into an apartment, locked the door, and I said, I'll wait till I get better. And then I started having a hard time breathing. I was breathing deeply, and I realized, you know what, my oxygen level is going down. I said, maybe, you know what, I'll wait one more day. And then I saw it's getting worse, so I just went to the hospital.
Now, the doctors had to put you into a coma to intubate you, but not once, but twice. First for 18 days, then they woke you up. You took a turn for the worse. They put you back under into a coma for another 12 days and then brought you around again. What was that experience like?
That was the worst experience because I'm a medic. I was involved with intubating people for many, many years. Volunteers of United Cella, paramedics and doctors intubate every day. And I see the results. United Cella only intubates if it's a really, really bad condition. We'd rather not. It's a dangerous procedure. And I said the second time when they came to me, they actually said, we're sorry, we have to put you again into a coma, induce you into a coma. I was crying, and I actually thought I'm never going to come back. And I had to say goodbye to my family, and I had to say again goodbye to all the volunteers and supporters of Hatzalah. And I thought, this is it. And a few days later, they luckily, miraculously, thanks to prayers from all around the world, I was able to wake up.
Now, to put you into that coma, they have to use some pretty strong drugs. What effect do those drugs have on you while you're unconscious?
So that's really the big problem of people who are induced into coma. They use a lot of very strong drugs to put you into a total coma. You should not be able to move your hands and pull out that would be a normal reaction of someone to pull out a pipe. So that's what leads a person to go into hallucinations. And the dreams I had were very, very bad dreams. So when I woke up, I actually thought I lived through all these dreams. That was real. I was in a terrible disaster trying to save people that were drowning, and I was intubating, and people died all over me, and I thought it was real. So it took me a few days to actually understand that it was just a dream. And that was the hard part about this.
Now, you've dedicated your career at United Hatzalah to saving other people's lives, but this time it was your life that needed saving. Are there any lessons that this experience has taught you?
First of all, that we should take these opportunities when these things happen to take the best out of it. And the best out of it is to unite everyone together. You know what? We have so many reasons to be divided, but a COVID pandemic is a good reason for the world to understand that these things could destroy the world. God forbid if these things get worse and worse. No one's protected, nowhere in the world. So I think this is a good opportunity for me as a Jew, an Israeli. I wish we find a solution for the COVID problem and we give it to our neighbors all around us. From Israel to Iran, everywhere around the world, because this is our job as Israelis. We always look for tikkun olam. And I think this is an opportunity to say, you know what? We should unite when it comes to fighting diseases like this, disasters. And forget about our arguments that we have about land and about other things. There is much more important things that we have to talk about our own lives.
Tikkun Olam, fixing the world. Eli Ber, President of United Hatzalah, thank you for joining us and all the best for your complete recovery.
Great to be here again. Hope to be here again next time.
Well, from one man's extraordinary personal experience to a global perspective, one voice has rung loud, not just this year, but for many years, about the looming threat of a global pandemic and the need to be prepared. That voice belongs to Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft and now co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has pledged billions for the development of vaccines and treatments for COVID-19 and other deadly diseases. We asked Ruth Atherton, director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute, for an update on those efforts.
My name is Ruth Atherton. I am Deputy General Counsel at the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's a pleasure to be part of the OurCrowd Pandemic Innovation Conference. Thanks to each of you for the innovations you are bringing forward to help end this global pandemic. With nearly 8 million cases and 400,000 deaths, we're all aware of the severity of the current pandemic. But even more severe are the health effects on people in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Our vulnerable populations in the world need to be protected, and they need the help of the global community. World Bank currently estimates that for the first time since 1998, global poverty could actually increase. Up to 49 million people may be pushed into extreme poverty, which means living on less than $1.90 a day. Ensuring equitable global access to the vaccines, diagnostics, and tools that are developed is a critical part of our global COVID response. And this isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Because helping low and middle income countries protect vulnerable populations is a critical step in how we end the COVID pandemic. Each of you are developing technologies and tools to help in the global response. As you do so, I hope you will consider the design criteria that can enable access, uptake, and availability. At the Gates Foundation, our teams are focused on 4 main areas: improving detection, accelerating research and development, protecting the most vulnerable, particularly in Africa and South Asia, and minimizing the social and economic impacts. One example is the Therapeutics Accelerator, a collaborative project to accelerate R&D to bring drug and biologics to the market to help in the COVID response. Together with other funders, we have made $300 million available for research and development for therapeutics. And equitable global access is at the heart of the Therapeutics Accelerator, ensuring fast and flexible funding while also ensuring access to lower resource countries bring all of us into a better position in the world. Under the Accelerator, screening of compound libraries is currently going on in US and Europe. Clinical trials are being funded for prevention and treatment. And a clearinghouse for promising monoclonal antibodies has been established. The Foundation is also working with partners in digital health, telemedicine, and access to healthcare and technology. PowerOf.org is an opportunity for individuals to find local opportunities to contribute to the COVID response. In total, the Foundation has supported $350 million in funding, but this is only a fraction of what is needed. Our global response together must be coordinated, international, bringing together all sectors to mobilize the billions that will be needed in the coming months. We all need to collaborate, and we all need to innovate. How will your innovation help bring an end to the pandemic? Thank you, and enjoy the conference.
Ruth Atherton, Director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Medical Research Institute. Now, for any solution to work, it has to work in the field. Let's take a closer look at startup companies addressing the 3 major medical challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic: vaccine, testing, and treatment. Let's get an update on tech on the front lines. So what is the role of startup technology in a global pandemic crisis? Here with an expert perspective is OurCrowd's head of business development, Lally David.
Startups move fast. Tech founders are uniquely agile, perhaps even more so here in Israel. In the last 3 months, we've seen the fast pace at which entrepreneurs have been able to adjust their technology and value propositions to address recent challenges. Here at OurCrowd, we've been able to identify these startups with the most relevant technologies and to provide the backup and support to introduce them to global industry leaders and to take an active part in pushing this forward. More philosophically, maybe, I think COVID has created a blur of local and global. Everyone is on Zoom or Teams, regardless of physical locations. Everyone is experiencing similar fears and challenges, regardless of geographies. And in a way, you find executives at leading multinational companies becoming as agile as early-stage founders. This is an incredible development that could lead us all to the greatest accomplishments.
Thank you, Lali. Now let's turn to the Holy Grail at the top of the global agenda in dealing with the coronavirus, the search for a vaccine.
In Washington state today, U.S. researchers tested the first experimental coronavirus vaccines.
Never has an experimental vaccine been more eagerly anticipated.
Finding an effective vaccine is the holy grail in preventing another coronavirus pandemic.
Breaking news overnight on the development of the COVID-19 vaccine from Dr. Anthony Fauci with some words of caution.
Efforts to find a coronavirus vaccine are about to take another major step forward.
A leading health specialist suggested we might not need a coronavirus vaccine.
Joining us now is Dr. Joseph Jacobson, head of the MIT Molecular Machines Research Group. Dr. Jacobson, thank you for being with us. I think the fastest vaccine ever produced was for mumps back in the 1960s, and that took 4 years. Obviously, technology has advanced in the last half century, but what are the challenges we still face in developing a vaccine, and how long do you think it might take?
Yeah, actually, I think the first vaccine back in 1796 by Ed Jenner actually set the record. It was about 46 days from concept to inpatient challenged response. That's a great hallmark for us, I think, to think about. And for me, what's happening right now, not just the number of shots on goal that we're taking, but the number of different kinds of shots, the number of different types of approaches that we're taking to vaccine, I think is really exemplary. I think the probability is really high that by the end of this year, we're going to have efficacious vaccine.
Does it really matter if there's no vaccine? For example, there's no vaccine for AIDS, which was deadly when it first emerged. And since then, we've discovered treatments that make it manageable. Is that a possible scenario for COVID-19?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we've come a tremendous distance from those early AIDS vaccine attempts in a couple of different levels. We've got the ability not just to create native protein or native antigen, but we can actually make recombinant protein as a first level. We can make RNA vaccines to express and to code for that, those antigens. And as a third level, we can actually go after the DNA of the virus itself, so-called CRISPR vaccines. So I think we've got a lot of tools in the arsenal to go after these. I don't think we're going to need all of those for COVID. I think we're going to solve that with the first two of those. But we've got a tremendous number of tools in the tool chest. I think we're going to be able to be successful both on the vaccine front and on the therapeutic front for COVID.
Professor Joseph Jacobson from MIT, thank you very much. Now, there are estimated to be at least 80 different vaccine research efforts around the world, and at least 5 of them just here in Israel. Lali, what is the business perspective on these different projects? What is OurCrowd looking for when choosing which one of these many options to invest in?
Well, we typically look for 2 main things. One is a brilliant team, and the other is proven technologies. This will enable the company to hit the ground running when addressing COVID challenges.
Now, OurCrowd has announced a $100 million pandemic innovation fund, and its first allocation is a $12 million investment in MigVax, an Israeli company developing a human vaccine for COVID-19. It's based on a vaccine platform they developed for a kind of avian coronavirus that has been proved effective in live animal testing. Joining us here in the studio is Dr. Sigal Kremer-Tal, Vice President for Clinical and Regulatory Issues at MigVax. Dr. Kremer-Tal, welcome to the Pandemic Innovation Conference. We know already that the MigVax vaccine kills the coronavirus in birds, but when will we know if it actually works on people?
So we are aiming to start the first in-human clinical trial at the end of this summer. So we're expecting the first human data to be available by the end of this year.
Now, you have to prove it works scientifically. What are the regulatory hurdles you have to pass before it can actually reach the market?
Now, the science is very strong. This vaccine hits all three arms of the immune system, including the humoral, generating antibodies, the cellular-mediated immunity, as well as the mucosal immunity. In terms of regulation, vaccine is given to healthy people, so safety is utmost importance, and there's no way around it. And this is the main regulatory hurdles. MiCVax 101 is an oral vaccine, so safety profile is very, very favorable.
Now, MiCVax is a small research lab in the Galilee, but if your vaccine works, you're going to need billions of doses and worldwide distribution. How will you scale to that kind of global operation?
So scale-up doesn't happen overnight. We have contacted global regulatory authorities to obtain their feedback on our regulatory and clinical program. These include the NIAID at the NIH, the Paul Ehrlich Institute in Germany, and the CEPI. CEPI is the Coalition for Epidemiology and Preparedness Innovation. They are backed by the World Economic Forum as well as various nations. And so we have their feedback on our clinical program, development program. In terms of manufacturing, so we have contracted BTG. It's a Ferring company located in Israel for development and manufacturing. For additional scale-up, we are in contact with global companies to further scale up of the manufacturing.
And what about funding? $12 million might fund the research, but it's not going to get you global manufacturing and distribution of billions of doses of a vaccine.
So this initial funding is supposed to get us past the phase 1/2 clinical trial. Given the good results, we expect additional contacts with the investors, big pharma, as well as large manufacturers.
Dr. Sigal Kremetal from MiCVax, thank you very much. And now, testing.
In the fight against the coronavirus, there is still one big unknown. How many people have actually contracted it? Maybe even without showing any symptoms.
So what exactly does the test for the coronavirus involve?
There's so many questions about testing in the U.S. News that private labs are now joining the fight. Tonight, we're going to take you inside one.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved a new rapid test from Abbott Laboratories.
Lally, we've heard about tests that return false results, about countries testing tens or hundreds of thousands of people, and other countries doing hardly any testing at all. What's the business case for testing?
Well, in order for countries to reopen their economy, they have to be able to scale the testing. They have to be able to test mass population of symptomatic people as well as healthy population. They also need to be able to do rapid tests. This will enable global travel and opening the borders.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Ronen Ivri. He's the CEO of OurCrowd Diagnostics. Dr. Ivri, you developed your technology for cancer patients to make chemotherapy drugs more efficient by measuring the effect of a particular drug on the tumour cells of a specific patient. What gave you the idea that your technology could be used for COVID-19 diagnostic tests?
Well, we're a startup company, and we said we're a startup in the field of diagnostics, medical diagnostics. We have an expert team in the field, and when SARS-CoV-2 broke out, we said, how can we use our personalized tagging opportunity, our tagging technology, to actually screen out the different population for people who are virus positive? And we said, if we can use these barcodes, this is a small shift, but we use our technology, we use our team, and we shift this towards the SARS-CoV-2, we can use this as a mass screening technology. And this is what we're developing right now.
Barcode says it can slightly modify the reagents currently used for screening And by using an additional tool, it can massively increase the number of tests for COVID-19 to about 100,000 a day, enabling Israel to test its entire population in a matter of weeks. What's the theory behind that, and have you been able to show that it actually works?
Yeah, so the science behind barcoding and next-generation technology, which is the additional tool that we're using here, the science is solid. We know that this has been used also in viral screening before. What we have been doing is taking the current PCR-based tests, and we're adding the tag to them. This has been also published by others. We're not the only ones working on this, but we're aiming this as a kit that could be screened, could be sent over to the potential customers, which are the large screening customers, and they could actually increase the amount of tests they do in each potential lab. So in this way, you can actually screen the population and not just individuals who are potentially ill. That's where we're adding our edge.
And when can we expect barcodes testing to begin in Israel?
We believe that within the next few weeks, we can bring this proof of concept. We're already begun work on positive and negative samples, and we show that we can actually, using next-generation screening, define the infected individuals from the non-infected.
And are there any other countries or companies showing any interest?
There are, of course, others who are developing other screening technologies, but I think that's what makes me as a CEO understand that we're on the right track.
Dr. Ivry from Barcode, thank you very much. Alongside you, we have Professor Gabi Sarusi from Ben-Gurion University, the brains behind a coronavirus breath tester from a brand new company called Flannemus. Welcome to the studio. How does it work?
Oh, very simple, by the way. An individual blow into a breathalyzer-like device, which by accident I have it here with me. Okay? And basically, inside this breathalyzer, there is a chip, electronic chip, that contains something like 20,000 nano antennas. And once the antenna absorbs whatever coming from the mouth, after breathing it, we are scanning the chip inside the capsule in a terahertz spectrometer. And then we can see the signature, the exact signature of coronavirus-infected people compared to healthy people. And this unique signature that we actually distinguish throughout the clinical trial that were escorted by the Israeli Ministry of Defense and Elsri and Ministry of Care, and also by Sheba Hospital, actually showed us that we have a very, very unique signature for coronavirus carriers.
And will this test work on people who are asymptomatic? Could it accurately predict who's about to become sick?
Actually, the first round of the clinical trial were on asymptomatic people. Actually, there were soldiers that were in a camp that were isolated from all IDF, and all of them were asymptomatic. So I can say definitely all of them.
And where do you see it being used in a practical sense? Could it be a quick test at airports or shopping malls or cinemas?
Yeah, we position ourselves to do the test at point of entries, unlike tests that are done in point of cares. Point of entry, this is the unique that we have because it's so prompt test. So a guy can come, give the breath in the breathalyzer, and then put it in the spectrometer, and after 12 seconds, he will have the answer whether he is a carrier or not. And we think that the result that we got was something like 90% of the PCR, because the clinical trial were done in a way that we test them in parallel with the PCR swab test and with the breathalyzer. And so we believe that if somebody is diagnosed at the point of entry as a positive to coronavirus, he can do another test because it's so rapid, so there is no problem to do another one just to increase the reliability of the test.
Gabi Sarusi from Flannemus, Ronan Ivry from Barcode, thank you very much. And now we turn to the third area of technology, treating the virus.
Tweeting on Saturday morning about a combination of drugs he said have a real chance to be one of the biggest game changers in the history of medicine.
How far along are we in developing a drug to treat COVID-19?
Turning now to a possible ray of hope in the quest for a treatment for the coronavirus.
Lally, nearly 500,000 people have died from COVID-19 in just a few months. The little we know shows that it attacks the body's internal systems in complex ways, feeding off human cells, reproducing inside the body and leading to incurable collapse of the lungs and other vital systems. The world's greatest medical minds are working on virtually nothing else. Why should some little startup be able to make a difference?
Well, the beauty about startups is creating something out of nothing, to take technology from one field of expertise and to apply it to a completely different use case. We see that across our portfolio, but one example for this is TytoCare, that has taken optics technology to create a device that enables remote medical care. Let's take a look.
Introducing Tyto Home by TytoCare, an FDA-cleared award-winning remote medical exam kit. With Tyto, clinicians can remotely diagnose and treat many of the most common conditions. The Tyto device comes with an app and special adapters for examining the heart, lungs, throat, ears, abdomen, skin, and temperature. Tyto Home by TytoCare. On-demand medical exams from home.
So remote medical care has proven these days to become critical for corona patients and non-corona patients as well. So startups can make a difference.
Thank you, Lally. Well, the front runner in developing a treatment to kill the virus in its early stages inside the body before it's done any real damage is a company called Sanitize. They're in the middle of clinical trials in Canada to see if a nasal spray and throat gargle based on nitric oxide will successfully treat people at risk and coronavirus patients before they get fully infected. Dr. Gili Regev, the founder and CEO of Sanitize, joins us now from Canada. Dr. Regev, why do you think the Sanitize product can kill the coronavirus?
Why do I think? I don't think. I know it kills coronavirus. We have done studies. We have looked and studied it in our lab and in other labs externally that show that actually when you put Sanitize's liquid, the nitric oxide releasing solution, together with the virus for a very short time, with the SARS-CoV-2 virus, it kills it. Within 2 minutes, it gets complete kill of the virus.
COVID-19 has only been with us for a few months. How was Sanitize able to develop this treatment so quickly?
The Sanitize has a platform technology, and this platform can treat all kinds of topical diseases and upper respiratory diseases. We always had this nasal spray for flu prevention on our platform technology, but it wasn't the priority. We were working on chronic sinusitis and diabetic foot ulcer, onychomycosis. And when this just started, everything was on hold. And then we decided that we quickly pivot and develop this treatment for COVID and do a quick clinical trial.
How is the treatment delivered? How do we actually use Sanitize?
It's a simple nasal spray, and you can see just a simple nasal spray that you can spray in your nose together with a nasal lavage, a nasal rinse. It's very simple. Everyone can do it at home. You can do the nasal spray during the day when you're at work. Every time when you think you may get infected, you can use it, or early on the disease.
And are you suggesting that with Sanitize we won't need masks or gloves or hand washing or social distancing? We can simply inhale the virus and then kill it? It sounds a bit risky.
That's exactly what it is. It's your hand sanitizer for your nose. So when you go outside, you use hand sanitizer. You will still use the hand sanitizer, but then you will use this nasal spray to sanitize, to kill the viruses in your nose if you get infected. So this is what I'm suggesting.
And in terms of frontline workers at the moment, is this an extra layer of protection that they can have, as well as the masks and the other things they're using?
Yes, exactly. Until this has all the proofs for effectiveness in clinical trial, then that's what we're suggesting, is these people will do the nasal spray where in between breaks when they're finishing their shift, and make sure that if they got infected, the virus will be killed immediately.
You're now in clinical trials in Canada. How are they going, and when can we expect the results?
The clinical trials are going well. We started in British Columbia, but cases are very, very low in British Columbia. We moved quickly into Quebec. We have 4 different sites recruiting in Quebec, and the number of cases are higher there. So we're hoping to get this done quickly. It has 2 arms. One is a prevention arm with a control arm to it, and the other one is a small efficacy trial. So we look at people that are already infected early on in the disease and treat them.
Are you going to be doing trials anywhere else apart from Canada?
We are currently applying for an IND in the US to do a trial in the US, which will be an early treatment trial. We're looking at designing a trial right now for the UK as well.
Now, COVID-19 is not the only disease that's caused by a coronavirus. So can Sanitize be used against other diseases as well?
Yes, I mean, as I mentioned, this was designed to be a flu prevention treatment. So every time when you go on a plane, when you go off the plane, you spray in your nose and you make sure you don't get the flu. This will be, nitric oxide kills any virus. For everything that we've seen so far, it is effective a very strong antimicrobial against bacteria and viruses and fungi. So if it's the flu or if it's the next pandemic that will unfortunately probably happen one day, this will work as well.
So if the trials are successful, when can we expect to see Sanitize on the pharmacy shelves?
So what we are hoping for is within 2 to 3 months to complete the trial in Canada, go back to Health Canada and use these data to ask for an expedited review and getting to what we call a phase 4, getting it into the market. Once we show this, we believe the US as well will grant us an emergency use authorization to start selling it in the US, and from there we'll go to the rest of the world.
Thank you, Dr. Gili Regev from Sanitize.
Thank you.
Lali, if Sanitize is approved, it's going to be the first approved treatment anywhere in the world for coronavirus. Do you share Gili Regev's belief in the effectiveness of the nitric oxide? Is that why OurCrowd is investing?
Well, remember, this is based on Nobel Prize-winning science by Professor Fareed Murad, the Nobel Prize winner in 1998 for his work on nitric oxide, and now he's a member of the board of Sanitize.
OK, we've heard now from several startups who are developing what they hope will be solutions to the urgent problems created by the pandemic, whether a vaccine, testing or therapeutics. But, Lali, these are tiny companies, and for this technology to be deployed worldwide, don't they need to find large multinationals as partners to help them with the massive undertakings like manufacturing and distribution?
Well, at OurCrowd, we're fascinated by the collaboration opportunities and potential between huge multinational companies and startup companies. This is where magic is created. And this is very much thanks for enterprises such as Johnson & Johnson, who are open to innovation and embrace technologies created by startup companies.
Well, joining us now is Neil Ackerman of Johnson & Johnson, where he's head of advanced technologies for the global supply chain. Neil Ackerman, welcome to the studio. Johnson & Johnson is one of the largest medical and consumer supplies companies in the world. You sell billions of products every day. If a small startup, like the ones we've heard from here, develops a solution that passes all the regulatory tests, how can they bring their product to a global market on the massive scale required?
Well, the great news is that what you heard today was that all these companies have the DNA to scale. When you find that they're in a country like Israel, they're built to go out. And sure enough, in every one of these examples that we've heard, that's exactly what they're doing. Now, how do they go about doing it? They do the 3 most important things that customers always want. First, they make sure they have great selection. So they're going around and making sure that they're going to have the best product they can possibly have. Second, they're making sure that it's convenient. What you heard from every one of these startups is they're focused on what is the best experience for that customer, for that patient, How can they get it fast, and what's their plan? And then third, customers don't wake up every day and say, I would like to pay millions of dollars for this product. They want a good price. And in every case, they're building for scale. So with price, selection, and convenience, you have a winner. And that's why they're going to make it.
So these small startups, they'll need multinationals like you as partners. But to what extent does a huge corporation like Johnson & Johnson need the kind of innovation that these small-scale entrepreneurs are developing? You have huge resources. Can't you just do all this in-house?
Well, we cannot. We're asked this question quite often. You know, what does a startup bring? And my answer is they bring the 3 C's that we don't have and that we would love to keep on having. They bring an unbelievable culture. So that's the first one. And when you bring an unbelievable culture, you can bring that into even big multinationals and, of course, mid-sized small-cap companies. Second C, they bring great capability. So we may have some of those capabilities, but they're focused on this capability. They do it every day. They dream about it. It's in their blood. And so that C is very important. And the third C, you know what they're really close to? The customer. And so when they bring these types of things to us, culture, capability, customer, those 3 C's are why we want to engage with the startups.
Let's turn to your particular area of expertise. This crisis has exposed the global supply chain as much more fragile than most of us believed. How do we prepare for the post-pandemic future? How is the supply chain going to change? Who's going to lead that change inside major corporations? And what kind of technology is there that can predict future supply and demand to make sure this disruption doesn't happen again?
So those are a lot of questions. And what I would say is, first and foremost, it's a value set. It's a mindset. And it's called resiliency. And so what does supply chain have? Supply chains over thousands of years have learned the art of resiliency. You need them. And what we're finding right now is they're going from a cost operation to now this revenue-generating machine that they're needed for everything. We're all stuck at home, and we're seeing this happen right now. So the first set of your questions, what is a kind of leader? I think it's going to be supply chain folks, supply chain officers, folks that understand operations. And why do I say that? Because now more than ever, not only does the world need operators, they also need people with a lot of heart. And what happens with folks with a lot of heart? Who has all that heart? All the folks at the front line, the manufacturing folks, the truck drivers, the logistics coordinators. They're the heartbeat of this system. And so when you take all the people that understand the heart and they understand the operations, they're going to be able to lead that supply chain through the future and obviously come to the results that we're looking for. The second part of this question had to do with where we're going to go and what does the end-to-end supply chain look like for technology. And that is really going to be focused on a series of innovation areas, which I'm sure we can talk about forever. But mostly it's going to be artificial intelligence and machine learning combined with amazing logistics and fulfillment solutions with sensors in between that can make the magic happen. And so, yes, it's complicated. Yes, it's gnarly and very difficult to fully understand the end-to-end chain. But it's only going to happen if you have different folks in different disciplines coming together to make it happen. And so we're really lucky to be working with the startups, including the ones at OurCrowd, and to be able to find these solutions for the world.
Neil Ackerman from Johnson & Johnson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lally, before we move on, investors can choose between a lot of different opportunities and they look at the long term, not a passing fad. Why should investors be able to trust that a pop-up company created to solve an immediate problem, even if it's a brilliant solution, has any kind of long-term future?
Well, these are not pop-up companies. These companies have proven technologies and brilliant teams. These are companies that will address COVID challenges and remain post-COVID.
Lally David, Head of Business Development at OurCrowd, thank you very much. And now from startups to investment. We've looked at some of the possible solutions to this crisis, but even the best ideas aren't going to get very far without resources. So let's take a look at a major $100 million initiative to fund these and other projects.
OurCrowd, the Jerusalem-based crowdfunding venture capital platform, is planning to raise a $100 million pandemic innovation fund to invest in technologies that will address challenges posed by the COVID-19 wave.
These are the entrepreneurs who are already in the fight. They're developing technologies, whether it's in diagnostics or vaccines, therapeutics, remote health, and even technologies that are focused on the new normal, allowing us all to work from home and to do distance learning. There is unprecedented innovation going on, and they need support. In the meantime, help is on the way for those important entrepreneurs who are fighting the virus and the new situation.
This $100 million pandemic innovation fund will be OurCrowd's biggest fund to date, and it made headlines around the world. Here to tell us more about why the fund is necessary and how it will operate, I'm joined now by Richard Norman, the co-head of funds at OurCrowd. Richard, $100 million is a lot of money by anyone's measure. Why do we need a pandemic innovation fund?
Well, we at OurCrowd, like every investor, have been watching the public markets very closely over the last few months. And you can't help but notice the massive bifurcation that's happening between the basket of companies that are addressing the COVID crisis and the very many that are not. And while there are ways to participate in this public play on the pandemic side, we haven't found a private play to do the same thing. And the hallmark of OurCrowd is to offer investors the chance to participate in private companies before they go public, where we believe most of the value is created, and do so in interesting structures. So we have built now over 20 funds on various different themes and sectors to take advantage of this private market value creation. And we think that we are uniquely well placed in this pandemic, given that so many of our companies have positioned themselves to tackle COVID-19 and to create an investment vehicle in which our investors could come in and participate and find this private market pandemic play.
Well, here to discuss this in more detail are two of the fund's principals, Dr. Maurice Laster and David Sokolik. Dr. Laster, the world's greatest medical minds are hard at work on developing a vaccine. We've already heard some good news of at least partial success from Oxford and other places. Why should investors believe that one of your companies has a better medical solution?
Because the breadth and depth of this pandemic is unprecedented. It is affecting so many different aspects of life and medicine as well. We at the fund identified two major silos that we're going to be addressing. The first is going to be prevention and containment. The second going to be treatment and healing. So as far as prevention and containment is concerned, obviously vaccines are going to be up there. There's going to need to be more than one vaccine. We're going to need to find the patients. We're going to need to treat them better. We're going to need to contain this disease, whether it's with personal protective equipment, whether it's surfaces that are anti-infective, whether it's screening and sensors that can detect the virus or detect people who might be infected. And then we're going on to treatment and healing. We're obviously going to be looking at drugs or therapeutics directly attacking COVID-19, but it's not only COVID-19. COVID-19 really is affecting all parts of the body almost. There is central nervous system involvement. There is the famous pulmonary involvement, ARDS. There is going to be long-term complications, probably of pulmonary fibrosis. And just this week, there was an article in the New England Journal that COVID-19 may actually cause diabetes. So we're talking about a disease that is affecting so many different aspects of life. It's not just going to be over with a vaccine.
And why should investors choose OurCrowd to lead the search for these kinds of medical solutions?
Well, my partner, Dr. Maury Blumenfeld, and I have been working at OurCrowd for the past 6 years on our medtech portfolio. We've invested in over 30 companies to date. About $100 million has been used in these companies. And I'm really proud of the fact that about half of our portfolio has actually been able to find use cases to address the COVID-19 pandemic. It's incredible. Beyond their base technologies and what they're doing, they use those technologies to help attack this disease. And as far as our fund is concerned, we're going to be looking at a combination of heritage companies, companies we probably heard of, such as Sanitize, which is developing a liquid nitric oxide solution to help prevent COVID-19 infection healthcare providers and maybe even treat. We're looking at a heritage company like MeMed that can help diagnose and say which patients may deteriorate and may be asymptomatic, and you'll be able to detect who they are. And new companies like MigVax, Israel's leading vaccine company, oral vaccine that's being developed for COVID-19 from the Migal Research Institute, and a new company that just launched today called CytoReason, which is using AI to find new drugs to fight immunological problems as well as ARDS. We see tremendous deal flow, hundreds of companies a year that has only increased since the onset of the pandemic. So we feel very confident and excited to try and address the pandemic with this fund.
David Sokolik, at the end of the day, isn't it rather simple? You just find the best medical solution in prevention or treatment, you back it, and you win. Shouldn't this just really be a medical fund?
Well, there's certainly important aspects of the medical crisis that need to be addressed, and as Morris outlined, we see a wealth of opportunity there. But beyond that, we also think this crisis is going to have impact in many different aspects of society, as well as the economy. And as Richard mentioned, if you look at what's going on Wall Street, there are companies that are benefiting from this because they're addressing issues that are being accelerated by COVID. So we plan to put together a diverse portfolio, and we want to address the non-medical aspects as well. What you see on the slide are some companies from our existing portfolio, and the overall strategy for the fund is to put together a portfolio that includes medical as well as non-medical opportunities, later stage investments from the existing OurCrowd portfolio, and a substantial number of early stage investments as well that are new investments which also address these trends.
And what are those long-term trends beyond medical that present investment opportunities right now?
So when we put the fund together, we sat down and spent quite a bit of time thinking through different investment theses. They're outlined in the PPM if you'd like to read them in detail, but I'll just address one of them that is something that speaks to me personally. So one of the areas where we see and expect an acceleration is in education. The world has been through a massive experiment in distance learning in the last few weeks. As a parent, I've also suffered through and tried to figure out how to educate my kids online. And thankfully, we have the basic desktop video conferencing tools to enable us to implement the existing form of education online rather easily. But we also think that this crisis will open the opportunity to experiment with new forms of education. Now that people are used to computer-mediated education, it opens the door to leverage tools like AI and address some of the challenges in the existing educational system.
And a lot of other things to come. Richard Norman, Dr. Morris Laster, and David Sokolik, thank you. Stay with us because there's a lot more news and special guests coming up. Over the next hour, you can choose from 20 breakout sessions. Each one is 20 minutes long with a 5-minute break in between, so you can fit in 2 or jump between them as you wish. All the details are on the event page. These sessions are live, each one on a dedicated Zoom room, so you can ask questions and talk to startup CEOs and experts, some of whom you've already met here today. Go to the event website, scroll down to the sessions that interest you, and connect. Also, remember our unique networking feature. Via the website, you can contact and chat online with any of the other people attending today. And if you're not already registered on the OurCrowd website, sign up now for all the news of future investment opportunities and keep this window open because we'll be back in an hour after the breakouts with the top 10 trends in pandemic technology, with startups taking on the new normal, with Dr. Paul Rothman, the Dean of Johns Hopkins Medical, with top investors and the world premiere of the new music video from Dave Carroll, When the World Stops Ending. Stay tuned now for Jaime Perez of the Perez Innovation Center.